Hey there guys, so we're out scouting some durum here right now, and just kind of want to show you guys how much we bake. So this was beautiful, beautiful moist seeding conditions. It was probably one of the nicest seeding conditions that we've had in like a long time. But we had a pretty good little dump of rain, probably about an inch of rain right after. Came pretty quick, and it just baked up the ground pretty hard. So you can just look at this. Just rock freaking hard. And like obviously it's thin, right? Because the crop has a lot of trouble coming through anything that's been baked. There's some draws. You can see those draws where it's even more prone to baking, and it baked even harder and it just thins the crop right out. Now, in our country, that's okay, because we don't seed extra heavy because, you know, we're drought prone, and it's just going to produce bigger heads, and there's not going to be any yield difference. So we're not worried about yield difference. But one thing that can play a big part is, since it's a thinner crop, there's less competition for weeds. So then weeds can be more of a problem, keeping it clean. So yeah, so we're just out here doing some crop checking. And this is durum. This stuff is around 1 leaf, 2 leaf, 3 leaf, and the 4 is just coming. So it's 3 to 4 leaf. I think there's probably some that might be even 5 out here. But look at this, see? Just rock hard. And all these little guys, they gotta try to come up through that. Oh, those aren't cracks. You guys haven't seen nothing. Our land will bake so bad, the cracks will split open about an inch wide, and you could lose your wrench down there. One time we lost Johnny. No, I'm kidding, we didn't lose Johnny. We lost him another way. Anyway, we're just cruising out here. We're checking some durum, checking for weeds. That's what we're checking for. Actually, you can tell it's pretty dang clean. This was chickpea stubble last year. I haven't actually spotted a weed yet. But I know that this land is prone for hawksbeard. It's a terrible weed. It's a broadleaf. So, oh, right here. Right here. So this was like, obviously we didn't quite fully kill this in the burn off. So this stuff is like, well, it's definitely not healthy. It's like, you can't kill me, but he will. He's gonna come back. So this is hawksbeard. It's a terrible weed. So now you gotta try and kill that. How do you kill that? It's already like majorly wounded. That'll die. This might. In here, if it gets some rain, it might shoot another shoot. But anyway, this hawksbeard crap, terrible. So, depending on what you have for weeds coming is depending on what type of chemicals you got to use, right? Look at this. This is actually where a drill drove, and then on top of it, it got that rain. Yep. Now don't worry. These little guys are going to put out such big heads, I'm not even worried about it. Okay, so as I was saying, depending on your weed situation, depends on what chemical you're going to use. Grassies, if you want to take out a grassy weed, which is like a volunteer, well, anything grassy, like it could be volunteer wheat, could be volunteer durum, could be wild oats, could be darnel, could be downy and Japanese brome, could be quackgrass, could be foxtail barley, could be whatever. You name it, anything in the grassy family. That's expensive to take out of a grassy, like to take out of cereal. Cheap to take out of broadleafs, like your chickpeas and your lentils and stuff. Expensive to take out of a grassy. So it's pretty clean. We got a good burn out here, and this was later seeded. So I don't think we're gonna have to put a grassy out. We're just gonna hit it with a broadleaf chemical, which is cheap. Let's go scout some more fields. Oh yeah, I drive right out in the field. I don't mess around. I think the old timers, like my grandpa, he would have an old set of diamond Heralds. Now, they didn't farm near as much, so it was a lot easier for them, but they had certain fields that were more prone to baking than others. And diamond Heralds has nothing to do with diamonds, okay? It's just kind of, the slots in it are like shaped like diamonds. So I don't know, that's the word, that's that name it got. But anyway, it's a Herald with like, how do I explain this? 4 inches long. It's got these pegs. They could be like 1 inch in diameter all the way down to a point, probably about 4 inches long, and they would come in like 4 by 5 foot chunks, and you would put a bunch together, chain them all together, and you would throw heavy stuff on there like tires, rims, whatever you could put. You would put heavy stuff in there to sink those points into the dirt a little bit. You just want to kind of break it, so then that would break the crust. And it wasn't like a heavy Herald or something like that where the tines are on like a 45-degree angle or something like that. No, it's a 90-degree angle, and you're pushing it in. It's almost like tillage, but not, because it's down to points. It's tines, just really big, heavy, aggressive tines. And the theory was, you drag that out after you've seeded it, especially if it, like, maybe not if it was this tall, you wouldn't do it at this stage. You could actually probably kill some crop. But if you seeded your land and then you got a big heavy rain and it baked it before your crop come up, you would want to run out there with your diamond Heralds or something to break that crust off, or you could pretty much kiss your crop goodbye, because it can't penetrate through that hard ground. So that's 101 of some of our land that can bake. And this is not an uncommon thing. It's pretty common depending on where you are. The heavier the land, the harder it bakes. If you have sand, your sandy land's probably never going to bake. So we just do the same old here. All we're doing is looking for broadleafs. That's all we're doing. I know I'm making you sick. I'm making me sick too. I actually don't see anything other than hawksbeard. So Kosha and Russian thistle, as you know, those are other problem weeds. That takes a little different type of chemical. So since hawksbeard seems to be our weed to kill out here, we're going to come out with something that can get hawksbeard. And look at right here, water sat. Remember when I said we had this rain right after seeding? This was seeded through, crop was growing, and then drowned it out already. Look at this, see? Rock freaking hard. If I could get a chunk out of here, you would see that it's probably that thick. That thick. Now, these little guys, they're all gonna be fine, but it drowned it out a lot, and the rest, it just baked them, right? So in theory, if we had our drills, this is a long ways away from our farm, but if we had our drills, we would just come over here and seed these draws, because you can see they go all the way over there, right? Until you get another rain, and then drowns them out again. So that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But yeah. Rock hard. Okay. Okay guys, so we just made it to another field. And this one, there's not much hawksbeard, but there is a lot of Kosha. So this is Kosha. Kosha is a big nemesis around pretty much all southwest Saskatchewan. Or Western Canada, I should say. You see these little hairs on it? Those little hairs, see those little hairs? They actually work to kind of repel the chemical in water. Like, it's hard to get stuff stuck to that. So that works in the Kosha's favor as a defense system, and it irritates the crap out of me. Now, the only reason why this is probably here at this stage is because it was probably the size. They start super small, eh? I'm trying to see if I can't find one here, right here. That's the beginnings of one, and that's even bigger than if it just germinated. So these things will start like the size of a pinhead, okay? And they have all those little hairs on them, and so when you're doing a burn off, which is what happened here, it's really hard to get your chemical to stick to something the size of a pinhead with little hairs saying, "Get off of me." All right? So that's one of the reasons why you're going to see lots of Kosha push through a burn-off. And a burn-off, again, just on a history note, is we go out there with chemicals, Roundup, like Banville, Express, and stuff like that to kill everything out in the field before we seed, right? Well, if they were super small, these are freshly germinated because there's no damage to them. But if they were super small when we did a burn off, these ones aren't. These are all wounded. See this? That's all wounded. So that is not going to die well. Now, they might not amount to much in some of these things, but yet these little guys will, okay? So then you want to come back in with a different mode of action, preferably a different group altogether, but that's hard because there's really only group 2 and group 4 that kills broadleafs. So you don't have a lot of options, but you have different actives in each group. So you don't have to come back in with the exact same active, which is what we won't do. So, and that's just to build up, that's to keep these weeds from building up against resistance, because there's lots of Kosha weed in parts of Western Canada that's actually, is it group 2? Group 4. Shoot. It's one or the other that's actually building a resistance to. And some I think is group 9. And group 9 is Roundup. So going back to the whole chickpea video, killing the weeds completely dead is the best thing. When you don't kill those weeds completely dead, they're going to go, like I said, in wounded dormant mode. And they're building a resistance to that. And they're like, you can't kill me, you sucker. And then it's going to come right back up with a vengeance. And then if you go back out with the exact same actives and groups, it's got an immunity against it. So that's just like getting the common cold or the flu, right? If you can get over it, you can build up an immunity against it. So there's quite a bit of Kosha out here in this particular field. So and hawksbeard not so much. So then typically we would need to use a different chemical. But the logistics of using different chemicals for each one of your fields is very difficult to do. It's just a logistical nightmare. So you want to try and find a chemical that can get hawksbeard. You need to find a chemical that can get Russian thistle. You need to find a chemical that can get your Kosha. And you need to find a chemical that's different active than what you used in a burn-off. Remember, you would have thought of that prior to burn-off. And you're just going to blanket everything. You're going to get the hawksbeard in the hawksbeard fields. You're going to get the Kosha in the Kosha fields. And you're going to get whatever else that might be coming out there, because if it can kill Russian thistle and hawksbeard, it's going to die. So that's what you want to do. I know what you're saying. So Mike, if that's what you're going to do, then why are you even out here crop checking? Like, what's the point? Like, you're just going to hit it with a blanket anyway. Because as a farmer, you need to know what's coming out there. You need to know the stage of your crop. Because if it's too young, it will get hurt. If it's getting up to like close to flagged leaf, like if it's getting too far advanced, you will also hurt it. And then you can knock some yield out of it. So you need to know your staging. You also need to know your weed staging. How big are your weeds? If you just got little weeds, you probably don't have to put as much chemical in. If you got gigantic weeds, you're going to have to put extra chemical in. So also, you're also crop checking to make sure you don't have any anomalies happen. Mike, what do you mean an anomaly? Well, sometimes I've gone to fields after we seeded it, the crops should be 5 leaf, and there's big chunks of the field not even seeded, and we're like, what the heck happened out here? And yet it was, but there was a drill malfunction. So it's always important to inspect all your fields to make sure that they actually got seeded and seeded right. Because we always start off seeding once, but most farmers know they will yank their drills back out to either seed sloughs or seed screw-ups. So anyway, I've walked a long ways away from my truck, so I'm going to get back there, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Actually, side note, we're supposed to start getting some rain. I pray, because we've all these winds with 30-degree heat. It's dried the top probably inch, maybe 2 inches out, and the grass is actually starting to go backwards. It's starting to brown off, and we actually need a rain. Yes, we were wet, everything was good, but in this country, you're 2 weeks away from a drought. We are getting close. We're not getting close to a drought, but we definitely need some rain. So, if we could have a rain, it would make crop spraying a whole heck of a lot better. Why? Because it would just kind of rejuvenate those weeds. It would get them growing on all cylinders. And then you want a healthy weed to kill. You want a healthy weed to kill. You don't want something that's struggling to survive, because it won't really want to take anything in. It's in conserve and survival mode. It's not looking to eat when it's in survival mode, okay? But a healthy plant growing really good is looking to feed itself. Makes sense? That's when you want to spray them. Now, yes, we could wait to get a rain, but in this country, you could have a week at 90% guaranteed rain, and you could miss it all. You could miss it all. You could be 6 hours away from that rain, and the Weather Network decides, nope, it's now 10% for a millimeter, where you were 90% for 20 millimeters. So you're not guaranteed nothing out here in southwest Saskatchewan. So, and you can't just wait for a rain, because your crop is growing. It can stage out. We have a lot to do. So you pretty much got to start, and hopefully we can catch some rain, so that way maybe if you have a problem field like this one's probably one of the worst ones we got. Maybe we would leave this one until after we could get a rain and get everything growing really good and healthy, and then hit it hard. But so anyway, man, look how far I am away. I gotta stop walking around and talking to you guys. So we're just checking some Durum again here. This field I think is about 3 miles long. Now the Durum is ours, but this is not. So this is our neighbor's. So I'm just wanting to know what he has here. He has lentils. It's important to know what your neighbor has, so that way when you have to border up against your crop, you know how and what is sensitive. So we're coming out here with a broadleaf chemical. Right now it's a good stiff wind right to our neighbor's field. And so those lentils obviously are not going to want any broadleaf chemical anywhere near them. Now they're not chickpeas. If these were chickpeas are sensitive just to the smell of this chemical that we're spraying. Okay, just to the smell. If you had a wind, you could stay back 3 passes, and if you have a stiff enough wind, if they can smell it, you're going to hurt them. You might not kill them, but you're going to hurt them, and you could hurt them pretty bad. And you could hurt them for a quarter, up to a half a mile. Up to a half a mile out there. How do I know? Because it's happened to us. So that sucks. You don't want to do that. Now, lentils aren't as sensitive as chickpeas are. But be that as it may, we're going to have to stay back probably 2 passes. So we're going to have to stay back 2 sprayer passes, which is probably around 240 feet. And then whenever the wind comes from the west, then we're going to come back up, and then we can border it right up beside our neighbor, because the wind's going to be blowing it away from his field. Now, as you can tell, there's getting to be patches of weeds that are growing here. That's because we're always staying back during burn off, and he's staying back, and so then different patches of weeds grow here, and you know what? It just is what it is. I'm not worried about trying to get a patch of weeds here, because I don't want to have to pay for my neighbor's crop. You know what I mean? Now, speaking of paying for your neighbor's crop, most neighbors are pretty good. Like, people burn our land, we burn other people's land, that kind of stuff. Farmers burn other people's fields, and it's not on purpose, but those things do happen. You could be spraying up against your neighbor's crop and have a west wind 1 minute, and like that, all of a sudden you have an east wind or a southeast wind, and you're blowing right onto your crop. That's why you always got to make sure at any given moment you should know exactly which direction that wind is coming from, and approximately how fast, by looking in your mirror and seeing how much dust you have. Not how much dust you have, but the angle which the dust is behind you. If it's about a 45 in your mirror, you're like, it's not a bad wind. If it's a little bit more, it's greater than 45, you're like, it's getting stiff. If you can't even see the dust in your mirror, you know it's bad, okay? So you'll be out a skilled sprayer operator. He's going to be spraying wrong. He's going to look at his mirror. Oh, yeah, the dust is kind of trailing back there. It's not bad. If you look back in your mirror and it's not even there, you're in big trouble. You're in really big trouble. So anyway, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to run around to all the fields twice, because you have to, but it is what it is. And going back to burning other people's crops and then burning your crops, that kind of stuff does happen, you guys. It's unfortunate, but it does. You try to keep it down to a minimum. Most farmers are pretty good about it. Because if I burn someone's crop accidentally, obviously I'm going there with my checkbook. I want to make it right. But most farmers like, no, Mike, like obviously as long as it's not crazy bad, right? No, Mike, you just kind of burnt it a little bit. It'll kind of come back and or whatnot. And don't worry about it because I might burn yours accidentally next year. Or maybe I already did burn yours last year. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. Like I'm not worried about it because I might accidentally burn theirs. You know what I mean? So normally farmers are pretty good. Obviously, if you burn theirs like a quarter mile in on 3 miles, that's not good. You're gonna have to do a bunch of reimbursing, right? But if it's not bad, if it's a little bit of burn, most farmers are pretty good. You always find the odd bad apple, but so what we're gonna do is we're gonna head back to the office. And we're going to look at some the Saskatchewan Chemical Guide, and we're going to kind of go through some different chemicals that we can put down, and I'm going to kind of show you guys around that a little bit. If you don't see that video, now that I've just like psyched you up for it, it's because I got too busy, so it is what it is. All right.